Only the best and brightest gamers subject themselves to the mental deductions required by puzzle games. Gather round, big brains, and enjoy the top 10 free puzzle games on Itchio you don't know about. Baba Is You Jam Build allows you to change the rules of the game by moving words around. It's the game jam version of what later became the popular indie title Baba Is You. The puzzles consist of rearranging phrases to make the rules of the puzzle fit your needs. For example, changing the word order from flag is win to rock is win allows you to touch the rock to win instead of the flag that's out of reach. There's so many rules that are generally associated with certain objects, but you can never assume something will work the way you think it should, since all of the rules are changeable as long as you can rearrange the words in your favor. It gets very complex and layered, and my brain definitely broke towards the end, but if you're looking for a thought-provoking puzzler, then I recommend Baba Is You Jam Build. Fox Hunt is a first-person environmental puzzle game where you're guided by clues left by a fox. The game is inspired by The Witness, as the puzzles are solved using the environment. The fox leaves clues around that you reference, letting you know what you should do next. The difficulty of the puzzles are perfect, as the clues are vague enough to not be obvious, but helpful enough to ensure you don't get too lost. You have to piece together multiple components of a puzzle to open up the next area, which is very satisfying. The mystery of the story drives the game forward as you wonder who this fox is and what will happen when you ultimately solve the entire puzzle. If you're looking for a beautiful environmental puzzle game, then I recommend Fox Hunt. Game Inside a Game is a puzzle platformer where there's a game inside a game inside a game inside it. I think you get it. You control an orange square which you launch. The goal of the game is to get the orange square into the green square, which completes the level in as few moves as possible. The catch is that the properties of the square change when it enters or exits other mirrored levels. If you launch the square into another level, it gets bigger, and it gets smaller if you launch it out. The gravity of the square changes directions depending on where it enters as well. This gets very complicated as you figure out all of these rules, and duplicate squares come into play later on. If you're looking for a puzzle game that doesn't conform to the single screen form of design, then I recommend Game Inside a Game. Fragments of Euclid is an exploratory game about solving puzzles in a mind-bending environment. The game is very minimalist in terms of its art style, but its puzzles really hurt your brain in a good way. The puzzle room's gravity can change depending on which doors you enter and exit from. There are boxes that can hold down buttons which can be dropped through the doors to make them have a different gravitational pull than you. The game reminded me a lot of Portal with the door mechanics, but is arguably more complex because of the gravity changing mechanic. If you're looking for a minimalist puzzle game with some mind-bending puzzles, then I recommend Fragments of Euclid. Empty is a minimalist Zen puzzle game where you remove objects by rotating the room. You get rid of objects by matching them with the background of the same color, which causes them to disappear. It's very easy, but you do have to figure out which order to get rid of objects in, as some will obstruct others. There are also objects that will change the color of another item or wall, which adds a bit of extra depth. The soft soundtrack and calming sound effects really enhance the Zen atmosphere. The levels are well designed and varied enough in terms of their layouts to keep the game from feeling tedious. After beating a level, you'll read a quote about why you shouldn't be attached to physical things, you consumerist sheep. If you're looking for a calming puzzle game where you don't have to think too hard, then I recommend Empty. Cell Machine is a game where you arrange a series of blocks so that the puzzle solves itself. Each block has a different function, and you arrange them within the build area so they destroy all of the enemies in the level. Each block has a different function, like mover, rotator, pusher, slider, a mobile block, and generator. They all have simple functions by themselves, but pairing them together can become very complex. This allows for a lot of freedom in how the puzzles feel like they can be solved, as you can arrange the blocks in whatever ways you want. I often surprise myself at what I was able to create, which made me feel very smart. If you're looking for a strategic puzzler with a lot of freedom, then I recommend Cell Machine. Monstrous is a puzzle game where you have to figure out which order of moves you need to use to kill the monstrous creature. A monster came into the forest and your 4 party members set off in an attempt to kill it. Each member of the party sort of acts like a different class, having 2 of the 8 buttons binded to them. You have to pick the exact right order to use the 8 different moves at your disposal to defeat the monster. It's hard to learn at first, but you start to pick up on what moves to use when based on contextual clues, like this lady can only attack properly if she's over-caffeinated. The game gets a bit tedious because it's all designed around trial and error, but I'm glad there's a fast forward button. If you're looking for a hand-drawn JRPG style combat game, then I recommend Monstrous. You Are Now Possessed is a puzzle game where the game controls you. At the bottom of the screen there are tiles that indicate which directions you'll move the following turn. The dashes mean you can move wherever you want, but the arrows move you in that specific direction or sequence of directions, so you have to plan everything multiple moves ahead. There are even attack tiles that indicate which direction you'll attack in, which is used to kill enemies. The levels are very well designed with things like keys, movable objects, and the aforementioned enemies. For some reason the game plays like this. I just had to crop it for this video, but the pixelated art style is very cute. If you're looking for a puzzle game that requires a lot of planning, then I recommend You Are Now Possessed. Combo Pool is a physics puzzler where you ricochet colored marbles against each other to stay alive. If 2 marbles of the same color collide, then they merge together and upgrade to the next color. You have to keep the number of balls on screen to a minimum, since if there are too many on screen you'll run out of life. If your life bar reaches 0, then you get one last chance to shoot a marble and remove some balls from the field. You suck! You win by going through all of the color cycles before finally merging 2 pink balls together. There's a scoring system based on how well you do, as well as multiple difficulty levels and an endless mode, which adds a lot of replay value. If you're looking for a simple pool puzzler, then I recommend Combo Pool. Tiny Fragments is a puzzle game where you rearrange the pieces of the level to help the protagonist get the fruit at the end. The tiles of the level start out in a certain arrangement, but you move the pieces around to guide the constantly moving red guy. Moving pieces stops time, which really comes in handy when you need some extra time to think of a solution. Some tiles have locks on them. The gray locks mean the tiles can't be moved at all, and the gold locks mean they can only be moved after you collect the key for it. There are other environmental elements like buttons and cannons that give the game a good sense of pace while scaling in difficulty. If you're looking for a puzzle game where you control the level rather than the character, then I recommend Tiny Fragments. Those were the top 10 free puzzle games on Itchio you didn't know about. I'll have my playlist of free Itchio games you don't know about, as well as my videos about free puzzle games on Steam linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe to see more videos like this in the future.